My name is Margot Sullivan, and I'm 30 years old. I was sitting alone in my luxury penthouse on my 30th birthday evening, staring at my phone with zero messages from my family. That morning, I'd sent a group text announcing my milestone birthday, hoping this year would be different. Now, as the sun set over Boston Harbor, my phone buzzed, and my heart jumped, thinking maybe someone finally remembered. It was just a promotional email. Not one family member had acknowledged my existence. I looked around my $3.4 million penthouse and smirked bitterly. Funny how invisible you become when you're the black sheep, but I wonder what they'd say if they could see where the black sheep landed. Before we dive into what happened next, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, hit that like button so I know I'm not alone. Subscribe and turn on notifications because this story takes a turn nobody saw coming, least of all my family. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens when they finally discover the truth. Now, let me take you back to how I became the forgotten daughter. Growing up in suburban Connecticut, I was the middle child in what looked like a perfect upper-middle-class family. My parents, Richard and Patricia Sullivan, had 3 children. My older sister Camille was 35, the golden child who could do no wrong. She went to med school, completed a prestigious residency, and became the family's pride and joy. My younger brother Preston was 27, charming and perpetually given second chances despite failing at nearly everything he touched. Then there was me, Margot, the one who somehow always faded into the wallpaper. From the earliest age I can remember, I learned that my achievements didn't matter much. I brought home straight A report cards throughout elementary school, and my parents would glance at them, nod, and immediately pivot to discussing Camille's latest academic award or Preston's baseball game. When I made honor roll in middle school, my mother said, "That's nice, dear," and went back to her phone call with Camille about college applications. By the time I reached high school, I'd stopped expecting praise or attention. I just did what needed to be done and kept my head down. The pattern of exclusion showed itself in every family decision. Summer vacations were planned around Preston's sports schedule or Camille's internship opportunities. Nobody asked where I wanted to go or what I wanted to do. At dinner, conversations flowed around me as if I wasn't sitting right there at the table. My parents would spend an hour discussing Camille's challenging cases at the hospital or Preston's difficulties with law school applications. But when I tried to share something about my day, the conversation would shift within minutes. I learned to stop trying. The most painful example happened at my high school graduation. I was valedictorian of my class, something I'd worked incredibly hard to achieve. I gave the graduation speech to 500 people. Afterward, as I stood with my diploma looking for my parents in the crowd, I watched them slip out early. I later learned they'd left to make it to Preston's baseball playoff game across town. They chose his game, which his team lost in the first inning, over my graduation ceremony. When I came home that night, nobody mentioned it. My father said, "Well, celebrate later, honey," and that later never came. College was more of the same. I got into several good schools, but my parents steered me toward the state university because it was cheaper and they were already paying for Camille's medical school. I didn't argue. I took out scholarships, worked 3 jobs, and paid my own way through. Meanwhile, Preston partied through his expensive private college on my parents' dime, failed half his classes, and still got unconditional support. After graduation, I moved to Boston and started working at a tech startup. My family barely listened when I talked about my work. At Thanksgiving dinners, my mother would ask me how my little job was going with this dismissive tone, then spend an hour praising Camille's life-saving work at the hospital. When Camille got married 2 years ago, she didn't ask me to be a bridesmaid despite being her only sister. She chose 4 friends instead. I sat in the 3rd row at the ceremony, watching our parents walk her down the aisle with tears streaming down their faces. Nobody noticed I was crying too, for different reasons. The incidents piled up year after year. At Preston's law school graduation party last year, my parents didn't save me a seat at the family table. I ended up sitting with distant cousins who barely knew who I was. For my mother's 60th birthday, I spent 2 weeks searching for the perfect gift, a beautiful vintage locket with a photo of all 3 of us kids inside. She opened it, said thank you, and set it aside. It got lost in the pile of other gifts and was never mentioned again. I saw her wearing a simple scarf Preston gave her multiple times, but never that locket. These weren't isolated incidents. They were my entire life. But I told myself I'd built immunity to it. I told myself I didn't need their validation anymore. I was wrong. The morning of my 30th birthday, I woke up feeling hopeful despite everything. 30 felt significant, like maybe this milestone would finally matter to them. I sent a cheerful text to our family group chat at 7 in the morning. Can't believe I'm hitting the big 30 today. Feeling grateful for another year. I added a birthday cake emoji and hit send. Then I waited. By noon, I'd checked my phone 47 times. Nothing. Not even a thumbs up emoji. By evening, I sat alone in my penthouse watching the sun set over the harbor, and reality crashed over me. I would never matter to them. No achievement, no milestone, no amount of trying would ever be enough. That night, something inside me shifted. I was done trying to earn love that should have been freely given. I was done making myself small to make them comfortable. Whatever happened next, I decided, would be on my terms. What my family didn't know, what they'd never bothered to ask about, was that their forgotten daughter had become wildly successful. After college, I'd moved to Boston with $800 in my bank account and a job offer from a tiny tech startup that could barely afford to pay me. The company had 12 employees working out of a cramped office in Cambridge, developing data analytics software that most people thought would never work. I started as a junior analyst, the 8th employee they hired, making $42,000 a year. I worked 80-hour weeks because I loved the work and because I had nothing else to fill my time. My family never asked what I did. When I tried to explain the technology we were building, my father's eyes would glaze over, and my mother would change the subject. So I stopped mentioning it at family gatherings. I just said I work in tech and left it at that. What they didn't know was that 3 years into working there, our little startup caught fire. The software we'd developed solved a massive problem for corporations trying to analyze customer data. Major companies started knocking on our door. By the time I was 26, we had 200 employees and were fielding acquisition offers. When a major tech corporation offered to buy us for $230 million, we all thought it was a dream. As employee number 8 with a small equity stake, I did the math over and over, unable to believe it. After taxes and legal fees, my share came to $4.2 million. I was 26 years old and suddenly wealthier than I'd ever imagined possible. I didn't tell my family right away. I told myself I wanted to be smart about the money first. Talk to financial advisors, make a plan. I hired the best wealth management firm in Boston, and they helped me invest conservatively. Within a year, my portfolio had grown. The acquiring company offered me a senior position with a salary of $280,000 annually, plus performance bonuses that added another $100,000. I accepted, but the real reason I didn't tell my family had nothing to do with financial planning. The truth was, they never asked. Not once in 4 years did anyone inquire about my career beyond those dismissive questions about my little job. They assumed I was scraping by in expensive Boston, probably struggling to pay rent on some cramped apartment. My mother once asked if I needed money for groceries. Camille suggested I move back home to save money, since I clearly wasn't making much. Preston joked about my sad, single life in my tiny apartment, never having actually seen where I lived. Their assumptions were so far from reality that it became almost funny. I realized that telling them would change everything, but not in the way I'd once hoped. They wouldn't be proud of me. They'd just want access to my money. Preston would ask for loans he'd never repay. My parents would suddenly have opinions about my investments and my lifestyle. Camille would find a way to make it about herself, probably talking about how money isn't everything and her work saving lives was more meaningful. So I kept quiet and continued building my life. Over the next 4 years, I got promoted twice more. By the time I turned 30, I was a vice president at the tech company, overseeing a team of 60 people and earning $380,000 a year. My investment portfolio had grown to $5.8 million. I traveled internationally 4 times a year, staying in 5-star hotels and dining at Michelin-starred restaurants. I wore designer clothes, though nothing too flashy. I drove an Audi Q5, nice but not ostentatious enough to draw questions from family. I dated occasionally, successful men who understood ambition. Though nothing had turned serious yet, my life was everything I'd once dreamed of. Except for one thing, I still showed up to family events dressed down, driving my understated car, letting them maintain their illusions about my circumstances. At Thanksgiving, I'd bring expensive wine that nobody acknowledged. At Christmas, I gave generous gifts that got lost among the others. And nobody, not once, asked me how I could afford any of it. 3 weeks before my 30th birthday, I made the biggest purchase of my life. I'd been looking at real estate in Boston's Seaport District for months. The neighborhood had exploded with new development. Luxury high-rises sprouting up along the waterfront with stunning views of the harbor and city skyline. One building in particular caught my eye. The Azure Residences, a gleaming glass tower with amenities that read like a 5-star hotel. When a corner penthouse on the 30th floor came on the market, I went to see it and fell in love instantly. 2,000 square feet of pure luxury, floor-to-ceiling windows on 2 sides offering panoramic views of both the city and Boston Harbor. 3 bedrooms, 3.5 bathrooms, a chef's kitchen with Italian Carrara marble countertops, and top-of-the-line appliances. The master suite alone was bigger than most people's entire apartments, with a spa-like bathroom featuring a soaking tub and rainfall shower. The building offered a rooftop pool, state-of-the-art fitness center, 24-hour concierge service, and valet parking. The price was $3.4 million. I paid cash, I signed the papers, transferred the money, and closed within 2 weeks. Then I spent another $200,000 furnishing it exactly how I wanted. I hired an interior designer who filled the space with mid-century modern furniture, original artwork, and custom built-ins. The living room featured a $12,000 Italian leather sectional sofa. The dining table was solid walnut and seated 10. The bedroom had a custom king-size bed with luxury linens. Every detail was perfect, from the smart home system that controlled lights, temperature, and music with voice commands, to the wine fridge in the kitchen stocked with bottles that cost more than my family spent on groceries in a month. I moved in 3 weeks before my birthday and spent those weeks just walking through the space, still unable to believe it was mine. I owned this. I'd built this life entirely on my own, without anyone's help or support, and my family had no idea. They still thought I was struggling in some mediocre apartment, barely making ends meet in expensive Boston. The irony wasn't lost on me. The daughter they'd overlooked had become wealthier than all of them combined, and they were completely oblivious. That invisibility that had hurt me my entire life had actually given me something valuable. Freedom. Freedom to build an empire without their interference, their jealousy, or their attempts to control me. But that invisibility was about to end. 4 days after my forgotten birthday, I sat at my home office desk in the penthouse, staring at spreadsheets for an upcoming board presentation. The silence from my family had been absolute. I'd checked the family group chat multiple times, watching conversations flow about weekend plans and random memes, but not one person had circled back to acknowledge they'd missed my birthday. Part of me had wondered if maybe someone would send a belated message, a sheepish apology, anything. But there was nothing, just the continuing rhythm of family life that didn't include me. It almost convinced myself I was okay with it. Then my phone buzzed with a text from Camille, my sister, sent privately rather than to the group chat. My heart actually jumped. Maybe this was it, the apology I'd been unconsciously waiting for. I opened the message and felt my stomach drop as I read her words. "Hey, so Mom mentioned you've been weird lately." The message started casual, almost breezy, as if we talked like this all the time. "Look, I know you probably expected some big birthday thing, but we're all busy. Not everything is about you, Margot." I kept reading, each line worse than the last. "Some of us have real responsibilities, like saving lives at the hospital. Maybe if you had accomplished something meaningful, we'd have made more effort. But honestly, what's there to celebrate? You're 30 and still single, no kids, working some random office job." The words blurred as tears filled my eyes, but I forced myself to keep reading. "Mom and Dad are just disappointed you're not doing more with your life. Preston at least has potential even if law school isn't working out. You're just there, existing. Don't be dramatic about a birthday. Grow up." The message ended as casually as it started, as if she hadn't just eviscerated me with every sentence. My hands shook as I held the phone. Each word felt like a physical blow, punching into places that were already bruised from a lifetime of being overlooked. This wasn't just forgetting my birthday. This was Camille, my own sister, telling me I didn't matter enough to remember, that my life had no value, that I was a disappointment not just to her, but to our parents. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. She'd taken time out of her busy life-saving schedule to tell me how worthless I was, how undeserving of basic acknowledgement. I sat there for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, letting the hurt wash over me. Years of swallowed pain rose up in my throat. Every forgotten achievement, every dismissed accomplishment, every time I'd made myself smaller to avoid making them uncomfortable, it all crystallized in that moment into something sharp and hot in my chest. I walked to my floor-to-ceiling windows and looked out at the glittering Boston skyline, the harbor beyond reflecting the late afternoon sun. Behind me was my designer living room with its expensive furniture and original artwork. In my bank account sat millions of dollars I'd earned through my own intelligence and hard work. And my sister, my own flesh and blood, thought I was nothing, thought I'd accomplished nothing, thought I was just existing in some sad, meaningless life. Something snapped inside me in that moment. Not broke, but shifted, like a lock clicking open. I was done. Done protecting their feelings. Done making myself small. Done letting them define my worth. If they thought I was nothing, they were about to discover exactly how wrong they were. But I wouldn't tell them. That would be too easy, too simple, too kind. No, it'd let them discover it themselves. It'd let them walk into the truth and choke on their assumptions. It let them see exactly what they'd been dismissing for 30 years. The plan formed in my mind as I stood there. I'd invite them to my penthouse for a housewarming party. I'd send the invitation casually, vaguely, letting them maintain their assumptions. They'd come expecting to see my sad little apartment, ready with more condescension and pity, and instead, they'd walk into $3.4 million of reality. They'd see the empire I'd built while they weren't looking. They'd realize the daughter they'd overlooked had become more successful than any of them. The thought made me smile for the first time in days. A cold, grim smile that didn't reach my eyes. Revenge, I was learning, could be very sweet. I picked up my phone and typed a response to Camille, taking 30 minutes to compose myself first. My fingers hovered over the keys as I crafted each word carefully. You're absolutely right, Camille. I haven't accomplished anything worth celebrating. Thanks for the reality check. I paused, then added the hook. By the way, I'm hosting a small housewarming gathering in 2 weeks. You're all invited. I'll send details to the family chat, deliberately vague. No mention of what kind of home, no hint at the address or the reality they'd be walking into. Just a simple invitation that they'd dismiss as easily as they'd dismissed everything else about me. I hit send and waited. Camille's response came within minutes, exactly as dismissive as I'd expected. A housewarming? For what? Your studio apartment. She added a laughing emoji. Because of course she did. I'll check my schedule, but probably too busy. I didn't respond. Instead, I set my phone down and walked through my penthouse, from the chef's kitchen to the master suite, to the second bedroom ID converted into a home office. I imagined them walking through these spaces. Imagined the looks on their faces when they realized what they'd been dismissing. Imagined Camille's laugh dying in her throat. Imagined my mother's shock. Imagined my father's confusion. Imagined Preston's jealousy. The countdown had begun. In 2 weeks, everything would change. And I couldn't wait. Sunday morning arrived with bright sunshine streaming through my floor-to-ceiling windows. I stood on my private balcony, coffee in hand, watching sailboats drift across Boston Harbor. The water sparkled like scattered diamonds, and for a moment I felt at peace. Then my phone rang and I saw Mom calling flash across the screen. My first instinct was to let it go to voicemail. After Camille's text and the continuing silence from everyone else, I didn't have the energy for another attack. But years of conditioning made me answer anyway. It always answered when they called, even when they never called me first. "Hello, Mom," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Margot, honey, Camille told me you're upset about your birthday." Patricia Sullivan's voice oozed false concern. That particular tone she used when she wanted to seem caring but was really annoyed. You know we love you, but you're being a bit sensitive. I gripped my coffee mug tighter and said nothing, letting her continue. We're family. We don't need performative celebrations. Performative. As if wanting acknowledgement on my 30th birthday was some kind of attention-seeking drama. She kept talking, her voice taking on that reasoning tone that made me feel like a difficult child. You know we love you, but you have to understand how busy everyone was. Your father had his golf tournament. Camille had a double shift at the hospital. Preston was studying for the bar exam. We assumed you'd be mature about it. I tried to respond calmly. Mom, no one even sent a text message. It takes 30 seconds to say happy birthday. My voice cracked despite my efforts to stay strong, and I hated myself for it. That crack was all Patricia needed to shift into full attack mode. This is exactly why you don't have closer relationships, Margot. Her voice sharpened. You're always so needy, so demanding of attention. Do you know how exhausting it is having a daughter who keeps score? Camille never complains when we miss her calls. Preston never guilt trips us. But you, everything has to be about you. Each word landed like a slap. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but she rolled right over me. Patricia launched into glowing praise of Camille's selflessness. She works 16-hour shifts saving people's lives and never asks for recognition. She's humble about her achievements, not constantly seeking validation. Then came praise for Preston's determination. He's struggling with law school, but he never makes us feel bad about it. He takes responsibility for his setbacks. The implied comparison hung in the air between us. I was selfish. I was needy. I was ungrateful. Everyone else in the family was better than me in every way that mattered. My throat tightened with unshed tears, but I refused to give her the satisfaction of hearing me cry. Then Patricia shifted tactics in that masterful way she had. Her voice softened, became almost concerned. Are you having financial troubles? Is that what this is really about? Because Dad and I can't keep supporting all three of you forever. We just gave Preston $15,000 for living expenses, and Camille's student loans are crushing her. We assumed you were doing fine since you never asked for help. The implication was clear. I wasn't struggling enough to deserve their attention. Preston got money because he asked for it. Camille got sympathy because she talked about her loans. I got nothing because Id made the mistake of being self-sufficient. My silence was interpreted as ingratitude rather than independence. I gripped my phone so hard my knuckles turned white. Rage built in my chest, hot and sharp. My mother, the woman who'd given birth to me, truly believed I was nothing. Believed my life was sad and small. Believed I had no real problems because I didn't burden them with constant requests for money and attention. The lack of awareness was staggering. She couldn't see that her neglect had made me self-sufficient out of necessity, not choice. Honestly, Margot, this victim mentality isn't attractive. Patricia's voice took on that lecturing tone again. Maybe this is why you're still single at 30. Men don't want women who are this high maintenance. You should focus on improving yourself instead of attacking your family. We've always supported you, and this is the thanks we get? The absurdity of that statement, the claim that they'd always supported me, nearly made me laugh out loud. I took a deep breath, forcing my voice to go cold and flat. You're right, Mom. I need to stop expecting anything from this family. The chill in my tone must have surprised her because she went quiet for a moment. I pressed on. I sent a housewarming invitation to the group chat. I'd love for everyone to come. I think it's time you all saw how I've been living. There was a long pause before Patricia responded, her voice suspicious now. Oh, that apartment thing? Honey, we're really too busy to drive to Boston for some little apartment tour. I interrupted her. It's not an apartment. And trust me, you'll want to see this. 2 weeks from Saturday, 7 p.m. Dress code is cocktail attire. Cocktail attire? For a housewarming? Patricia's confusion was evident and tinged with new suspicion. Margot, what have you done? You didn't take out some ridiculous loan, did you? Please tell me you're not trying to impress us with debt. The concern in her voice wasn't for my well-being, but for the embarrassment I might cause the family. I felt something cold settle in my chest, something like finality. Just come, Mom. Bring everyone. Address is in the group chat. I paused for effect. Oh, and Mom? You might want to Google the building name before you arrive. Then I hung up before she could respond. My hands shaking with adrenaline, I immediately opened the family group chat and posted the formal invitation ID prepared. Saturday, 2 weeks from today, 7 p.m., the Azure Residences, Penthouse 3001, Boston Seaport, cocktail attire. Looking forward to seeing everyone. I attached a photo of the building's exterior, all gleaming glass and modern architecture, waterfront views visible in the shot. I watched as the read receipts popped up one by one. Patricia, Richard, Camille, Preston, all of them saw it. None of them responded, but I knew what they were doing. They were Googling the address. They were looking up the Azure Residences. They were seeing the listings for units in that building, seeing the prices, seeing the amenities. They were starting to realize that something didn't add up. Their poor, struggling Margot didn't live in a building with penthouses that cost millions. There had to be some explanation. Maybe I was house sitting. Maybe Id rented it for the party to impress them. Maybe this was all some elaborate lie. I could almost hear their conversations, their attempts to rationalize what they were seeing. In 2 weeks, all their rationalizations would shatter, and I would be there to watch. 3 days after my mother's phone call, I was working from home on a Wednesday afternoon. My laptop was open on the kitchen island, spreadsheets filling the screen as I prepped for a client presentation. The building concierge called up unexpectedly. "Miss Sullivan, you have a visitor. Your brother Preston is here. Should I send him up?" I froze, confused. Preston had never visited me before. He didn't even know where I lived, or so Id thought. Curiosity overrode caution. "Sure, send him up," I said, setting down my coffee and closing my laptop. I walked to the private elevator, the one that opened directly into my penthouse foyer, and waited. When the doors slid open, Preston stood there with a sheepish smile on his face, hands in his pockets, looking younger than his 27 years. "Hey sis, surprise!" He stepped into my foyer and I moved aside to let him pass. "I was in Boston for a study group. Thought I'd stop by and see how you're doing. Mom said you seem stressed on the phone." He was acting unusually friendly, almost brotherly, which immediately put me on guard. Preston and I weren't close. We never had been. He was the baby of the family, the one who could do no wrong even when he was clearly doing everything wrong. I studied his face, looking for the angle, because there was always an angle with Preston. "Come in," I said carefully, leading him into the main living space. I watched Preston's eyes widen as he took in the penthouse. The soaring ceilings, the massive windows with harbor views, the designer furniture, the open floor plan that flowed from living room to dining area to gourmet kitchen. He tried to mask his surprise, but I saw it flash across his face. "Nice place," he said casually. "Where's your roommate?" "I don't have a roommate," I replied, watching him process that. "Oh, you rent the whole apartment? Must be expensive." He walked further in, and I could practically see him calculating square footage and rental costs in his head. His eyes lingered on details, the Italian marble, the sub-zero appliances, the custom built-ins. We settled in the living room, Preston sinking into my $12,000 Italian leather sofa without knowing what it cost. He kept up the friendly brother act for about 20 minutes, asking about my work in that vague way that showed he wasn't really listening to my answers. I made coffee, brought out some pastries I'd picked up from a French bakery down the street, and waited for the real reason had come. It didn't take long. "So, I wanted to talk to you about something." His tone shifted, became more serious. "Here it comes," I thought. "I'm in a really tough spot financially." He launched into his well-practiced story. The bar exam hadn't gone well, had failed for the second time. Without passing the bar, he couldn't get a real legal job. He was working part-time as a paralegal, making barely enough to cover his rent and expenses. "Mom and Dad have helped so much already," he said, his voice taking on a pleading quality. "I hate to ask, but could you loan me $10,000? The number hung in the air between us. $10,000. I stared at him, genuinely speechless. "You forgot my birthday," I finally said. "Didn't even send a text. Now you want $10,000? Preston's face hardened instantly, the friendly mask slipping. "God, you're really going to hold that over me?" His voice rose. "It was just a birthday, Margot. Grow up. Family is supposed to help each other. When have you ever helped any of us?" I felt anger surge through me, hot and sharp. "I never helped them?" I'd never asked them for anything. I'd put myself through college. I'd built my career alone. I'd never once asked for money or support because I'd learned early that asking was pointless. Preston stood up, pacing now, his anger building. You know what your problem is? He pointed at me accusingly. You've always been selfish. Mom and Dad gave you everything, and you act like the victim. Camille works herself to death, saving lives. I'm trying to build a career. What do you even do? Sit in some office moving numbers around? His dismissiveness of my career, his complete lack of awareness about my actual life, was almost funny. But the entitlement pouring off him was infuriating. You clearly have money for this fancy apartment. He gestured around. Designer furniture, whatever. But you can't help your own brother? That's just cold, Margot. No wonder nobody likes spending time with you. You're just a tight-fisted, bitter person. I stood up slowly, walked to the window, and looked out at the view I owned. When I turned back to face Preston, I kept my voice quiet and controlled. Preston, I think you should leave. Seriously? You're kicking me out? He looked genuinely shocked, as if had expected me to cave, to write him a check, to fall back into the family pattern where I gave and they took. You came here to manipulate me for money, I said calmly. You didn't come to apologize or check on me. Just like everyone else in this family, you only remember I exist when you need something. The truth of my words hung heavy in the air. Preston's face flushed red with anger. Fine, be that way. He stormed toward the elevator. Don't expect anyone to show up to your stupid housewarming. Well, I'll suddenly be busy that day. See how you like being forgotten. He jabbed the elevator button repeatedly. The doors opened and he stepped inside, turning to face me one last time. You're making a huge mistake, Margot. Family is all you have. When you're old and alone, don't come crying to us. The elevator doors slid shut on his angry face, and I stood alone in my penthouse, breathing hard. This was the third attack in 2 weeks. First Camille's cruel text, then my mother's gaslighting phone call. Now Preston's entitled demand for money paired with emotional manipulation. Each one had been worse than the last. Each one had confirmed what I'd always suspected, but never wanted to admit. My family didn't love me. They loved the idea of me being less than them. They loved having someone to look down on. They loved their roles as the successful ones, the important ones, the ones who mattered, and had been cast as the failure, the forgotten one, the one who should be grateful for any scraps of attention they threw my way. Well, I was done being grateful. I was done being small. In less than 2 weeks, they'd walk into my home and see exactly who they'd been dismissing. And I was going to enjoy every second of their shock. 10 days before the housewarming, the family group chat exploded with activity. I watched it unfold in real time, my phone lighting up with message after message. But notably, nobody was responding to my invitation. Instead, they were discussing their own plans for that weekend, a transparent attempt to show they were too busy for my little event. Camille posted first, "Who wants to do family brunch that Sunday?" My mother responded within minutes. "Great idea. We haven't all been together in ages," Preston chimed in. "I'm in." Then my father, Richard, who rarely participated in group chats, added, "Sounds good." They scheduled it for the day after my housewarming. A clear message. They were available that weekend, just not for me. I called Nora, my best friend, the one person outside this family drama who knew the whole truth. She came over that evening, let herself in with the spare key I'd given her, and found me on the balcony staring at the harbor. "Why are you even inviting these people?" Nora settled into the chair next to me, her voice gentle but firm. "They've shown you who they are. Believe them." "I know," I said quietly. "But I need to do this. I need them to see." "See what?" Nora challenged. "That you're successful? Margot, they don't deserve to know." She was right, of course. But this wasn't about deserving. It's not about showing off, I tried to explain. It's about closing a door. I've spent 30 years trying to earn their love, making myself small so they wouldn't feel threatened, hiding my success because I didn't want to upset the family balance. But they still treat me like nothing. The words came faster now, years of hurt pouring out. "So I'm done. This party is my goodbye. I need them to see what they lost. I need them to know that I didn't fail." They did. Nora reached over and squeezed my hand. "Okay," she said. "Then let's make it a night they'll never forget." 1 week before the party, my father called. I almost dropped my phone in shock. Richard Sullivan never called me directly. In my entire adult life, I could count on one hand the number of times my father had initiated contact with me. "Margot, your mother is concerned about you." Of course. He was calling on Patricia's behalf, not his own. Using my mother's worry as the excuse for reaching out, I braced myself. "Dad," I started, but he talked right over me. "Your mother says you've been difficult lately. This housewarming thing seems like a cry for attention. We raised you better than this." The lecture continued. Richard spoke about family harmony, about not causing unnecessary drama, about being reasonable. He never once apologized for missing my birthday, never acknowledged that they'd hurt me. Instead, I was the problem. My reaction was the issue, not their neglect. Then he shifted to what was really bothering him. "Patricia looked up that building address. Those apartments aren't cheap. Please tell me you didn't do something foolish." His voice mixed disappointment with condescension in that particular way fathers have perfected. "Take out loans you can't afford? Try to impress us with rented furniture? Because if you're in trouble, we can help. But only if you're honest about your situation." I tried one more time to tell him the truth. "Dad, I'm not in trouble. I'm actually doing really well. I've wanted to tell you all for years, but you never ask about my life." "Margot, everyone thinks they're doing well." He interrupted me dismissively. "But real success is what Camille has, helping people, making a difference, not just making money." The message was clear. Even if I had money, which he clearly doubted, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't be the right kind of success. I went quiet, realizing there was no point in continuing this conversation. "Here's what's going to happen," Richard said, his voice taking on that authoritative tone he used when giving ultimatums. "You're going to cancel this party. Stop this attention-seeking behavior. Apologize to your mother for causing stress. And well, forget this whole thing happened." I felt something shift inside me. "And if I don't?" My voice was steady. "Then don't expect us to enable your drama." It was a threat, thinly veiled. "Fall in line or be cut off." "The party is happening, Dad," I said quietly. "You can come or not, your choice. But I think you'll regret missing it." "Is that a threat?" His voice rose. "It's a promise," I replied, and hung up. 3 days before the party, the group chat ambush happened. I was in a work meeting when my phone started buzzing incessantly. I glanced down during a break and saw Camille had posted, "Okay, we need to talk about Margot's situation." Patricia responded immediately, "I'm so worried about her." Then Preston added his contribution, and I felt rage flood through me as I read his words. "She asked me for money last week. It was a blatant lie. Said she was struggling with bills." Camille replied, "I knew it. This party is a manic episode." My father chimed in, "We should consider an intervention." I watched this unfold in real time, my family creating a narrative about me that was completely false. Preston had flipped the script, claiming Id asked him for money, when the exact opposite was true. They were building a case that I was mentally unstable, financially desperate, throwing some kind of breakdown party. The gaslighting was so extreme it took my breath away. I typed a response, my fingers shaking. "Preston, that's an interesting story, since you're the one who asked me for $10,000. But don't worry, I know you're all busy this Saturday. The invitation stands, but I understand if you can't make it. I'll have plenty of other guests." I attached a photo of the catering menu from Harvest, one of Boston's most exclusive restaurants. The prices were clearly visible, the menu sophisticated and expensive. There was a long silence in the chat. Then Camille responded, "Who's paying for all this?" Patricia added, "Margot, sweetie, this isn't healthy." But it was my father's response that told me my plan had worked. "We're coming to this party." Suddenly, they were all confirming attendance. Richard, Patricia, Camille, Preston, all in. Curiosity had won, exactly as Id predicted. They needed to see what was happening. They needed to solve the mystery of how their failing daughter could afford any of this. The countdown was on. 2 days before the party, I finalized every detail. Id hired a professional bartender and catering staff from Harvest. Id selected wines from my collection, bottles that cost $300 each. The Hors d'oeuvres menu was elegant and extensive. Id invited 10 of my real friends, successful professionals who knew my worth. Combined with my 5 family members, it would be an intimate but sophisticated event. The penthouse had been professionally cleaned. Fresh flowers were being delivered the morning of the party. Everything was perfect. The night before, Nora stayed over. We sat on the balcony with glasses of wine, looking out at the city lights. "You don't have to do this," she said softly. "Yes, I do," I replied. "They need to know they broke the wrong person. I didn't shatter. I became diamond." Nora smiled at that. "Then let's show them exactly how brightly diamonds shine." I raised my glass. To closing doors, to opening new ones, to finally being free. We clinked glasses as the city sparkled below us. Tomorrow, everything would change. Saturday evening arrived with perfect weather. I'd spent the day preparing, getting my hair and makeup done professionally, selecting my outfit with care. The Stella McCartney cocktail dress I chose was elegant and expensive, deep emerald green that brought out my eyes. I looked successful, powerful, completely in control. By 6:30, the catering staff had arrived and transformed my kitchen into a command center. The bartender was setting up his station. Soft jazz played through my built-in sound system. The penthouse glowed with warm lighting, every surface perfect. At 7 sharp, my real friends began arriving. My former colleagues from the tech startup, now scattered across successful companies. My boss from my current job, a woman I admired deeply. Nora and her husband. Friends I'd made through professional organizations and networking events. Everyone dressed beautifully, everyone bringing wine or small gifts. Everyone genuinely happy to celebrate with me. The bartender mixed craft cocktails. Catering staff circulated with bacon-wrapped dates, tuna tartare on wonton crisps, truffle mac and cheese bites. Conversations flowed easily. People admired the view, complimented the space, settled in comfortably. This was my real life, the one my family knew nothing about. At 7:15, the building concierge called up. "Miss Sullivan, you have the Sullivan party here. 4 guests. Shall I send them up?" My heart began pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Send them up," I managed to say. I walked to the elevator, smoothed my dress, and waited. The elevator climbed 30 floors. When the doors opened, all 4 of them stood there in a tight cluster. Patricia in a department store dress that was nice but clearly not designer. Richard in a suit that was 10 years old. Camille in scrubs, as if she'd just come from the hospital, making a statement about her important work. Preston in khakis and a button-down, wrinkled from the drive. They stepped into my private foyer and froze. The elevator opened directly into my penthouse. No hallway, no shared space. Just straight into my home. They stood there, mouths literally hanging open, eyes wide, taking in the soaring ceilings, the massive windows with panoramic views, the gleaming marble, the designer furniture visible beyond. Patricia's hand went to her throat. Camille's face went pale. Preston's eyes went huge. Richard looked around, his jaw clenched, clearly calculating costs. "Hi everyone, so glad you could make it." My voice came out warm, but my eyes were cold. I'd practiced this moment. Patricia stammered. "Margot, whose place is this?" She was still trying to make sense of what she was seeing. "Mine," I said simply. "Welcome to my home." Camille recovered first, her voice sharp. "Your house is sitting?" "No, I own it." I smiled and gestured for them to follow me. "Let me show you around." I led them through the living room, watching their reflections in the windows as they took in the space. The 20-foot ceilings, the floor-to-ceiling windows spanning 2 walls, the Boston skyline glittering beyond one window, the harbor visible through the other. My living room alone was bigger than most apartments. Preston reached out and touched the kitchen island. "This is real marble," he said, almost to himself. "Carrara marble," I confirmed. "Imported from Italy." I opened the refrigerator. All Sub-Zero appliances, fully stocked. My mother was whispering urgently to my father. "This has to cost millions," I heard her hiss. Richard's face had gone red. I led them down the hallway. 3 bedrooms, 3.5 baths. My voice was steady, almost tour guide-like. "Here's the master suite." I opened the double doors. The room was enormous, with the same floor-to-ceiling windows, a sitting area, and a door leading to the master bath. Camille walked in like she was in a trance, running her hand along the custom built-ins in the walk-in closet. "Are these real?" She was staring at my collection of designer clothes. Yes, Camille, I can afford real things. The sharpness in my voice made her flinch. I showed them the bathroom with its soaking tub, rainfall shower, double vanity with marble countertops. Everything was pristine, luxurious, perfect. Back in the main space, my real friends watched with barely concealed interest. They knew the backstory. They'd heard about my family. Now they were watching the reckoning unfold. Patricia finally found her voice. Margot, what have you done? Her voice was shrill, almost panicked. Did you marry someone rich? Are you renting this for the party? Please tell me you didn't take out loans. The desperation in her questions was almost funny. My mother, who'd spent 30 years dismissing me, couldn't conceive that it achieved this on my own. I bought this penthouse 3 weeks ago. My voice was calm, matter of fact, paid cash, $3.4 million. I let that number hang in the air. All 4 of them stared at me in complete disbelief. Richard found his voice, authoritative and demanding. That's impossible. You work some mid-level office job. Where would you get that kind of money? Around us, my friends had gone quiet, watching. Nora was smirking in the corner, proud of me. So I told them. I told them about the tech startup, about being employee number 8, about the acquisition 4 years ago. I told them about my $4.2 million payout when I was 26. I told them about my successful career since then. My VP title, my salary that was now $380,000 a year. I told them about my investment portfolio worth nearly $6 million. I spoke calmly, not bragging, just stating facts. Facts they'd never bothered to learn, because they'd never asked. Facts I'd hidden because they'd never cared to look. Camille's face twisted with anger. You've had millions for 4 years? Her voice rose. And never told us? That's so selfish, Margot. We're family, you should have shared. Preston nodded eagerly. I asked you for help. You let me beg while you had millions? The entitlement was staggering. Even now, even seeing the proof of my success, their first reaction was that I owed them something. I turned to Preston, my voice sharp. You didn't ask for help. You demanded $10,000. 3 days after forgetting my birthday. After years of all of you treating me like nothing. Then I looked at Camille, and you called me meaningless. Said I had accomplished nothing worth celebrating. My voice was rising now, years of hurt pouring out. You said I was just existing, that my life had no value. Now you're angry I didn't share my success with you. The hypocrisy is breathtaking. Patricia tried to salvage the situation with manipulation. Honey, we didn't know. Her voice went soft, pleading. If we'd known you were so successful, we would have treated you differently. I interrupted her. That's the problem, Mom. My worth to you depends on my net worth, not on the fact that I'm your daughter. You didn't love me when you thought I was struggling. You just love what I have now. That's not love. That's greed. Richard's anger finally erupted. You made fools of us. His voice boomed through the penthouse. Let us think you were struggling. This whole party is just to humiliate us. No, Dad, I said, my voice steady. You humiliated yourselves. I just stopped hiding who I am. You never asked about my life. You never cared about my achievements. You never saw me. This party isn't about humiliation. It's about truth. Preston jumped in, his voice nasty. So what? You're too good for us now? I turned to him. I was always good enough. You just never bothered to notice. Camille threw her hands up. This is so typical. Always the victim, always seeking attention. Her words were meant to wound, but they bounced off me. I walked to the window, looked out at the view I owned, the city I'd conquered, the life I'd built. I'm not the victim anymore, I said, turning back to face them. My voice was strong, clear, final. I spent 30 years trying to earn love I should have been given freely, hiding my light so you wouldn't feel dimmed, making myself small so you'd feel big. The words came easier now. I'm done. Done pretending. Done hoping. Done waiting for you to see me. I already see myself, and I like what I see. Patricia's tears started, right on cue. How can you say that? We're your family. We love you. Her voice broke on the last word. I looked at my mother, this woman who'd given birth to me but never really known me. You love the idea of me being less than you. You love having someone to look down on. But you don't love me, because you don't even know me. You never asked. You never cared. You just needed me to play a role. The failure, the forgotten one, the one who made you all feel successful by comparison. I won't play that role anymore. Richard moved toward the elevator. If you feel that way, maybe we should leave. Maybe you should, I agreed. Patricia gasped. You're choosing these strangers over family? I looked around the room at my friends, at people who'd celebrated my birthday, who'd supported my career, who'd seen my worth when my own family couldn't. These strangers remembered my birthday. These people celebrated my success. These people actually see me. So yes, I'm choosing them. I'm choosing anyone who treats me like I matter. Because I do matter. Camille stormed toward the elevator, furious. This is ridiculous. Preston followed. You'll regret this. Patricia was crying harder now. You're breaking your father's heart. Richard paused at the elevator, his face hard. Don't expect anything from us again. The threat was meant to hurt. Instead, it freed me. I stopped expecting things from you years ago, Dad. That's why I built this life without you. That's why I didn't need you. I never needed you. I just wanted you to love me. But I don't need that anymore either. The elevator doors closed on their stunned, angry faces. The penthouse fell silent for a moment. Then Nora started clapping. Others joined in. Someone handed me a glass of champagne. You did it, Nora whispered, hugging me. I did, I whispered back. It's over. And somehow, impossibly, the party continued. We ate, we drank, we talked and laughed. My friends rallied around me, offering support and love and understanding. As the night wore on, I found myself on the balcony, looking out at the city. I'd done it. I'd closed that door. I'd said everything I needed to say. And I was free. The party ended around midnight. My friends left with hugs and promises to call. Nora was the last to leave. You okay? She asked at the elevator. I'm more than okay, I said, surprised to find it was true. I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight of their expectations, their disappointment, their dismissal, all of it had lifted. I slept better that night than I had in weeks. The next morning, Sunday, I woke to find my phone exploding with messages. 17 texts from Patricia, sent throughout the night. I scrolled through them, watching her emotional journey play out. Early messages were angry. How could you embarrass us like that? You made us look like fools in front of your friends. Then they shifted to manipulation. Your father hasn't slept all night. Camille is devastated. We gave you everything and this is how you repay us? By mid-morning, that turned pleading. Please call. We need to talk about your inheritance. That last one made me laugh out loud. My inheritance? From parents who'd just discovered I was wealthier than they'd ever be? I deleted all the messages without responding. By noon, Camille had launched her social media offensive. Nora sent screenshots since I'd never been on Instagram. Camille had posted a vague message. Sometimes family betrays you. Money changes people. I'll always choose integrity over wealth. The comments from relatives poured in. What happened? Are you okay? Camille was painting herself as the victim, martyred by my sudden wealth and cruelty. She was controlling the narrative for the extended family. Cousins started calling. Aunt Helen left a voicemail. Your mother says you've cut them off? What's going on? Cousin Rebecca texted. Heard you came into money and went crazy. Uncle Tom sent a long message about how family is family, no matter what. They were all getting Patricia's version of events, the one where I was the villain. Sunday evening, an email arrived from Preston. The subject line was, "What you owe me." I opened it with morbid curiosity. Had written a detailed breakdown of everything the family had invested in me growing up. He claimed they'd paid for my state school tuition, conveniently forgetting it'd been on full scholarship. He listed emotional support with a dollar value attached, as if love was a loan to be repaid. He calculated that I owed the family at least $50,000 for their investment in my upbringing. He threatened legal action if I didn't pay. The absurdity was staggering. I forwarded the email to my lawyer and blocked Preston's email address. Wednesday brought a new escalation. A formal letter arrived from the family attorney. I sat at my dining table, hands shaking as I read it. The letter questioned my mental competence, suggesting my recent financial decisions indicated psychological instability. They were threatening to seek a guardianship evaluation, implying I wasn't capable of managing my own affairs. The manipulation had reached a legal level. I immediately called my own attorney, Sterling Brooks, a sharp woman in her 50s who specialized in family law. Sterling read the letter and snorted. "This is completely baseless. You're a successful executive who made smart investments. You're clearly of sound mind. They have absolutely no grounds for this. This is pure intimidation." She drafted cease and desist letters to be sent to my parents and their attorney. "Don't let them scare you, Margot. This is what people do when they lose control. They try to regain it through fear. You're not doing anything wrong. You're just not playing their game anymore." Friday afternoon, my mother tried a new tactic. A text arrived. "Camille collapsed at the hospital. Stress from your betrayal. She's asking for you. Please come. Put aside your pride." My gut told me it was manipulation, but a small part of me worried. I called the hospital directly, asked for Camille Sullivan in the ER. The nurse was confused. "Doctor, Sullivan is working her regular shift. She's fine." My mother had lied, manufactured an emergency to try to force me to reach out. I blocked Patricia's number. The second week brought flying monkeys. People recruited to do my family's bidding. Family friends I hadn't heard from in years suddenly called. "Your parents are so worried about you. They just want to reconcile. You know family is everything." Mrs. Henderson from church left a voicemail about forgiveness. Mr. Palmer, my father's golf buddy, sent a long email about how parents aren't perfect, but they always love their children. Every message pressured me to apologize, to reach out, to fix things. They were building a case that I was the problem, that I was the one destroying the family. Then Preston showed up at my office. Building security called my desk. "Your brother is in the lobby. Hez asking to see you. Tell him I'm unavailable," I said immediately. 5 minutes later, security called back. Hez causing a scene, shouting about family betrayal. "We're going to have to escort him out." My face burned with embarrassment. My colleagues could probably hear what was happening. Preston was making a spectacle, trying to force my hand through public humiliation. Security handled it professionally, but I spent the rest of the day fielding concerned questions from coworkers. The guilt attempts intensified. Patricia sent photos to my email, pictures from my childhood, me as a little girl, smiling at birthday parties, Christmas mornings, family vacations. "Remember when we were happy?" the caption read. But I looked closer at those photos. In every single one, I was on the edge of the frame, slightly apart from the group, in the back row, off to the side. Even in the so-called happy memories, it'd been peripheral. The photos she meant to guilt me with actually proved my point. 2 weeks after the party, the ultimatum arrived. Richard sent an email from his work account, formal and cold. "Come to Sunday dinner. Apologize for your behavior at the party. Contribute $50,000 to Preston's education fund. Commit to helping pay Camille's student loans, $20,000 over 2 years. Or you are no longer our daughter." Head listed conditions, terms for remaining in the family, love with strings attached, contingent on my compliance and my checkbook. I sat at my desk overlooking Boston, the city spread out below me in afternoon sunshine. I drafted a reply, deleted it, drafted another, deleted that too. Finally, I wrote something simple and true. "I became your daughter the day I was born. I stop being your daughter the day you decide I'm not worth loving. That choice is yours, not mine. But I won't apologize for my success, and I won't shrink myself to make you comfortable. I love you, but I love myself more now." I hit send and waited. Richard's response came within an hour. "Then we have nothing more to say. Don't contact us again." I stared at the words on my screen. This was it, the final break. I waited for devastation to hit, for grief to overwhelm me. Instead, I felt relief. They'd given me permission to let go. I was free. 3 months later, Thanksgiving arrived, my first major holiday without my family. I'd been dreading this day for weeks, imagining myself alone while they gathered around my parents' table, probably talking about how I'd betrayed them. But Nora had insisted. "Friendsgiving at your place, no arguing." Shed invited my closest friends, people who'd become my chosen family. I'd reluctantly agreed, not believing it would ease the ache of being cut off from my blood relatives. Thanksgiving evening, 12 people gathered around my dining table. Everyone had brought dishes. Nora made her famous apple pie. My coworker Alexis brought a turkey shed brined for 2 days. Jonah, a man I'd met at an industry conference and had been dating for 6 weeks, brought homemade cranberry sauce. My penthouse filled with laughter, with the smell of good food, with warmth. We sat down to eat, and Nora stood with her wine glass. "To Margot," she said, and everyone raised their glasses. "Who taught us all what true strength looks like?" Tears filled my eyes. These people, who owed me nothing, had shown up. They'd chosen to be here. They'd chosen me. During dinner, the doorbell rang. My heart jumped, thinking maybe my family had come. Maybe they'd changed their minds. I opened the door to find no one there, just an envelope on the doormat. Inside was a card from Patricia. "We miss you. Hope you're well." No apology, no acknowledgement of what they'd done, just surface-level sentiment, probably sent to ease her own guilt. I put it in a drawer and returned to my friends. That's where I belonged, with people who saw me, who valued me, who showed up. I'd started therapy 2 weeks after the party. My therapist, Dr. Levine, had listened to my story and said something that changed my perspective. "You grew up emotionally neglected. It's a form of abuse that leaves no visible scars but deep psychological wounds." She validated my experiences. It wasn't my imagination. It wasn't my fault. I hadn't been too sensitive or too needy. I'd been a child who deserved love and didn't receive it. That validation helped me begin to heal. The grief was real. I was mourning a family I'd never really had. Parents who'd never truly seen me. Siblings who'd never treated me as an equal. But with that grief came freedom. Work became a sanctuary. I threw myself into a major project, leading my team through the development and launch of new software. We achieved record profits for the quarter. The CEO noticed my leadership and called me into his office. "We're promoting you to senior vice president. Your salary increases to $350,000, plus your annual bonus structure improves." I accepted, feeling pride that wasn't tainted by family jealousy. I could celebrate this success openly with people who were genuinely happy for me. My relationship with Jonah deepened. On our first date, I'd been honest about my family situation. I expected him to be scared off by the drama. Instead, Head said, "My family isn't perfect either. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love us hurt us the most." We bonded over choosing to build our own lives, our own definitions of family. He was kind, successful, emotionally available. For the first time, I was dating someone as an equal, not hiding parts of myself to seem more palatable. 6 months after the party, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Preston's voice came through when I did. "Hey, so I failed the bar again." His voice was subdued. "Parents cut me off financially." There was a long pause. "I was thinking about what you said at the party." Another pause. Maybe I was wrong. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was acknowledgement. "I hope you figure things out, Preston," I said honestly. "But I'm not your solution. I'm not your bank." I hung up gently and blocked the number. 2 weeks later, an email arrived from Camille. The subject line was, "I'm sorry." I stared at it for a full minute before opening it. She'd written paragraphs about her own struggles with being the golden child. I was always praised, but golden chains are still chains. Mom and Dad controlled me through expectations. They controlled you through neglect. I see that now. She acknowledged her cruelty, her jealousy, how Shed weaponized their parents' favoritism. She asked if we could meet for coffee. No expectations, just talk. I sat with the email for days before responding. Finally, I agreed to meet. We met at a neutral cafe halfway between Boston and our hometown. Camille looked tired, older than her 35 years. "I don't expect forgiveness," she started. "I just wanted you to know I see it now. The dysfunction, how unhealthy it all was." We talked for 2 hours. She shared her own pain, how the pressure to be perfect had crushed her, how Shed sacrificed her own happiness to maintain her role as the golden child. It didn't excuse what Shed done to me, but it helped me understand. We weren't enemies. We were both victims of the same toxic system. We agreed to take things slow, one coffee at a time, rebuilding something honest. 1 year after the forgotten birthday, I woke on my 31st birthday to texts from friends. Nora had sent flowers. Jonah had made reservations at my favorite restaurant. My work team sent a gift basket. Around noon, a package arrived. I opened it to find a book about family dynamics and healing, sent from Camille. The card read, "Still learning. Happy birthday, Small progress, but it was something real. There was no contact from my parents or Preston. I realized I'd stopped waiting for their calls. For months after cutting contact, it jumped every time my phone rang. Now days passed without thinking of them. It wasn't coldness or cruelty, it was acceptance. They'd made their choice. I'd made mine. We all had to live with the consequences. Maybe someday they'd do the real work, offer real apologies, accept me as I was. Maybe not. Either way, it'd be okay. That evening, I stood on my balcony where I'd stood 1 year ago on that forgotten birthday. Then, I'd been alone, invisible, desperate for scraps of acknowledgement. Now I was surrounded by people who chose me daily. My penthouse wasn't a symbol of revenge anymore. It was just my home, the place I'd built for myself, filled with things and people I loved. I'd proven nothing to my birth family because I'd realized I didn't need to. Their opinion of my worth wasn't truth. It was just their opinion. And I was allowed to disagree. My phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Margot? Patricia's voice, uncertain and small. Silence stretched between us. Your father and I have been talking. Her voice was careful. We might have been too harsh after the party. Still no real apology. Still conditional. Still focused on their feelings, not mine. If you're willing to work on things, she started. I interrupted her. Mom, I love you. The words were true despite everything. But I don't need you to validate me anymore. If you want a real relationship, I'm open. But it has to be honest. No more games. No more conditions. No more pretending I'm less than I am. The door is open. But you have to walk through it honestly. Patricia started to argue, to list reasons why I should be the one to compromise. I checked my watch. I have to go, Mom. Birthday dinner with friends. I hung up before she could respond. Maybe she'd think about what I'd said. Maybe she'd do the work. Maybe not. But it meant what I said. The door was open, but I wouldn't chase them through it. I got ready for dinner, looked around my penthouse, thought about my life. 31 years old, successful beyond my wildest dreams, surrounded by people who loved me for exactly who I was, free from the need for parental approval, free from family dysfunction, free to be completely, unapologetically myself. I smiled at my reflection. I'd built this, every bit of it, and nobody could take it away. I was finally home. Have you ever had to choose between family and your own well-being? Have you felt invisible in your own family? How did you find the strength to stand up for yourself? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Your experiences matter and you're not alone in this journey. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss more stories about finding strength in difficult situations. Remember, your worth isn't determined by people who refuse to see it. Sometimes the family you choose loves you better than the family you're born into. Thank you so much for watching and for being part of this community. I hope you find the courage to live authentically, to demand the respect you deserve, and to build a life that doesn't require anyone's permission. Until next time, choose yourself. You're worth it.